Hi, so today I would like to make a brief comment on Gareth Southgate, who did a really beautiful and heartfelt and authentic interview yesterday. And it's really nice to look at someone like that who's currently very centre stage after a not very successful outcome to a very well fought match, because he showed really beautiful communication skills. And I guess when we see it, communication skills in action that are working, it's really nice to just break them down a little in a way that maybe can be useful for viewers. So some of the things that really worked about what Gareth Southgate did in the interview, or one of the main things, was that he was really authentic. So the way he spoke made you feel that it totally came from his heart. And as such, it meant that when someone does come from their heart, when someone is truly authentic, as a viewer or an audience or a listener, we connect and our heart opens in response. So I found watching the interview, by the end of it, I was just like, oh, you just sort of want to give this guy a hug. But at the same time, he was full of dignity. And there's stuff about the way he spoke. So he spoke very steadily and considered. He found what he needed to say. So he made sparing but very important eye contact with the interviewer, and he looked away and looked down, sort of getting his thoughts together. So that was him giving himself that respect to find his thoughts rather than rushing to respond to a question or come up with a clever answer. So there's something about going inside if you're asked a big question and just taking the time that you need to find your response that is full of value, really self-validating, because it means that you really respect your own process. So that's one of the big things that stood out. Secondly, the way he connected and listened to the interviewer was also really lovely. So when the interviewer asked him questions, he really made eye contact and he really listened and nodded sincerely and received the question. And that's really lovely. We can all learn from that. When we listen, we can listen at an ego level of listening. So there's what can I say, or how can I prove myself, which has a very different energy to what we call a level 2 level of listening, where it's just where you're receiving and considering and thinking, and in the process of listening, you're really engaging with the other person. So that was another thing that he did really, really powerfully. And what I particularly noticed was that he wasn't defensive. There was, in that authentic revealing of how he felt, there was no ego, there was no bluster. He could so easily have been defensive or blustering, and yet he wasn't. And there was one time where the interviewer asked him quite a challenging question, and he towards the end of the interview, I think he said, have you really done everything you could? Was there anything you could do? And he just responded. He could have got defensive, but he responded really from the heart, which was delightful to see. He just paused, received it, and his intonation was just steady and then downward inflected. And so there was no barbs attached. And when someone responds from a place of without ego and without bluster, you find you can't pin anything on them. You can't pull them down because there's no barbs, there's nothing to pull at. So in conclusion, what we can all learn from Gareth Southgate is, when you speak, if it's something that's important, really giving that time to connect with your feelings about the thing, making sure that you go at a steady pace so that you can go in tune with the subtleties of your own emotions so that you can discover them rather than rushing from a more cerebral head place. and being prepared to really listen and respond to the person speaking, and making those few moments of eye contact really matter, so that when you connect, you're really checking with them that they're present and they're listening. And all of those, that lovely concoction, those components really worked. And as such, I think that he is even more respected now than he was before.